Hello, everyone. Welcome to Broadband Deployment News. States are obviously very happy about all of the broadband funding they're going to be getting from the BEAD program, but there are still concerns about FCC state maps. Be right back to look at that. Thanks for joining me, Rick Husey here with Broadband Deployment News. I wanted to comment on this article. Thought this was interesting. So this is in Fierce Telecom. States BEAD excitement tempered by execution and mapping worries. After much anticipation, the White House this week announced how much money will be allocated to each state as part of the $42.5 billion BEAD program. The BEAD allocations were generally well received, as you can imagine. States getting anywhere from just over 100 or really about $100 million up to Texas over $3 billion and everywhere in between. So again, the BEAD allocations were very well received. Some earlier estimates for how much funding they would receive were mostly accurate. I mentioned here that Delaware got about what they were expecting. It says some states received more than was expected. I guess that's what they're saying about Colorado here. We were very happy with the $826.5 million from the BEAD program. It's more than we anticipated, yeah. Said a rep for the Colorado State Broadband Office, adding that allocations across the country seem fair based on population size and need. And that's, what was looked at was how they came about this was we had $42.45 billion, and then we needed to look at, when I say we, the country needed to look at how many broadband serviceable locations there were in the country down to the address, and how many of those broadband serviceable locations actually had what they would consider reliable broadband, which is something, let's say, over 100 by 20, and then fiber, cable modem service, those kinds of things. Fiber, cable modem service, fixed wireless with licensed spectrum is what they're calling reliable broadband. But in general, who has broadband? Where is it? Where is broadband? Where should it be? And who has it? And then from there, they tried to determine who was unserved. That's anything less than 25 by 3. Who is underserved? Anything over that, but under 100 by 20. And then the calculation was, okay, how much does each state have of unserved locations? And how many unserved locations are there throughout the country? And then what does that mean as far as how much each state should get? So they did a little calculation there to be able to come up with that. So let's see here. So what we've got is now that BEAD allocations have been announced, each state has 180 days to submit initial proposals describing how they plan to run their grant programs. Initial proposals can be submitted beginning July 1st. Once NTIA approves a state's initial proposal, that state will be able to request access to at least 20% of its BEAD allotment. So that is the next step. So the states need to get their initial proposal in. They've got to have a 5-year plan that they will be putting out here soon. And then they have an initial proposal, and then they've got a final proposal, which is going to have even more details than the initial proposal. But as states pull together plans for the NTIA, there's still apprehension surrounding the extensive broadband build-outs needed across the country. And then there's questions as to whether BEAD will be enough. Concerns linger over whether BEAD funding will be enough to truly bridge the digital divide. And there are doubts about the accuracy of the FCC's maps that will determine where funding is designated within each state. This is great news for our state, said U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock, Democrat in Georgia, and that would be my state that he's talking about as well. Speaking of the $1.3 billion Georgia was awarded in BEAD funding. So $1.3 billion, that's more than Colorado's getting. You saw they were getting about $800 million, I think it was. So Georgia has a pretty good sized population, lots of rural areas, farms, those kinds of things. So we're getting quite a bit of money. Yet Warnock also raised concerns about the accuracy of the FCC's mapping system. According to him, up to 220,000 locations in Georgia that lack high-speed internet service may be missing from the map. And I'm not sure what he's talking about there. He may be talking about, I don't think he'd be talking about actual broadband serviceable locations missing from the map. In other words, areas that should have broadband and they're not a pin on the map. I don't think he's talking about that. I guess what he's saying is there's maybe areas that are on the map, but that are saying that they're served, but they're really unserved. So this would be very surprising that it would be this many. I'm not sure where he's getting this data from. Again, I don't think it would be I don't think it would be areas that should be pins on the map that we're not. Georgia was really on top of this from the very beginning. The broadband office here, they've been looking at this carefully. They've been using money already from the federal government through ARPA, both the Capital Projects Fund and then the local fiscal recovery funds. They've been applying that and getting that money to work. So they've really looked at this. I can't imagine that there's 220,000 locations that we're not aware of that should be serviceable. And I'd be surprised that there were not challenges that were made that would have reduced reduced it well below 220,000. So I'm not sure where he's getting his data. Mentions here Georgia's not alone. Kelly Workman, director of West Virginia's Office of Broadband, told Fierce that following West Virginia's over $1.2 billion BEAD allocation, the state's broadband office will continue to refine its mapping data to ensure that all federal and state programs are coordinated. So West Virginia getting over $1.2 billion. That's a small state. That's a lot of money, but it's also a state that's very difficult to serve in places, lots of mountains. So that's a challenge. Kelly Workman, director of West Virginia's Office of Broadband, told Fierce, that's Fierce Telecom, that following West Virginia's I just read that, didn't I? Sometimes miss that. Let's see. Officials are urging their citizens to help collect broadband data as well. The Kansas Office of Broadband Development, for example, is encouraging their residents to participate by completing speed tests of their own and submitting results to help improve the state's data. There are a lot of states that are doing that, where they're providing a speed test. A lot of times it's something that they're working in conjunction with somebody like Ookla or MLabs, and maybe as part of their mapping system, people can run speed tests. So they're trying to make sure that they're getting, in addition to whatever internet service providers are saying, that they can look at the speed test data from people, from their citizens and look at that and see if there's anything that doesn't look right. Now, there are challenges with that because when you're doing a speed test, you may not have the maximum advertised product. So the maximum advertised product may be over 100 by 20, but people may subscribe to something less than that. And they're doing a speed test. And then also people are doing speed tests over their home Wi-Fi network a lot of times. And depending on how good that is, that can be problems. But what they try to do with these, when they look at these speed tests, is there something really obviously wrong? So if you're looking at an area and you're gonna have points here and there that maybe you're saying that it's not showing what should be the maximum advertised speed that is being reported there by one or two operators. If they see that in points here and there, then it's probably not an issue. But if they start seeing areas where nobody's getting that, then they have to take a closer look at that. So these speed tests can help. Despite those efforts, experts remain skeptical over whether the funding will be enough for the proper implementation of a nationwide broadband build-out. For instance, Iowa received $415.3 million from the Biden administration to serve around 84,000 residents living in the state without internet connection. Dave Duncan, CEO of the Iowa Communication Alliance, told the Des Moines Register that might not cut it. It's enough money to give most people in Iowa some connection to the internet. We'll see, Duncan said. Those remaining unserved locations really are the toughest to serve, and they are the most expensive. And that's the case everywhere. The ACA Connects, and Cartesian did a recent study. They've done several studies when all this started happening, and they did their updated study when the latest map came out. And they really believe that a lot of states can do fiber everywhere, and that every state can certainly cover everybody with broadband. They just may have to do mostly fiber and then something like fixed wireless in other areas. So their analysis seems to show that it will work. And obviously, some states, you're going to have that area where most everybody can get fiber, and then you've got that small percentage, that hockey stick kind of chart where you've got the small percentage where you've got very few people in a large area, and it's going to be costly to cover them. So you may not be able to do fiber to those areas, and you've got to find another way to go. So they're in the same boat as everybody. But in Iowa, lots of farmland, lots of corn, a baseball field out there in the middle of corn somewhere, if that's still out there. So it's an area that is going to be harder to serve just because you've got, again, large tracts of land with very few customers. It's expensive to get that out there, but it can be done. And again, it's a different challenge for somewhere like West Virginia, where it's a small state, but you've got lots of mountainous areas and people living far away from each other, and hard to get fiber up a mountain, those kinds of things. So they've got to look at the things differently, but they're similar, but the same problem, I guess. WISPA President and CEO David Zumwalt said the announcement marked an important milestone for BEAD rollouts, yet he noted much work lies ahead in getting everyone across the country connected. So WISPA is the Wireless Internet Service Providers Association. So they are a lobbying group, an association for wireless internet service providers, fixed wireless. And fixed wireless is something that's been great for reaching areas that are very hard to reach. But there's definitely a preference from the NTIA in the Notice of Funding Opportunity for fiber, and he's making comments about that here. He says all solutions should be on the table. Pernicious and wasteful overbuilding must be strenuously avoided, Zumwalt added. And that's true. We don't want to overbuild anything that's already there. So if there's a fixed wireless provider that's out there that's providing service over 100 by 20, that should be the last place that's looked at, even if it's all unlicensed, I would think. There is something in the Notice of Funding Opportunity that says fixed wireless to be considered reliable has to be licensed spectrum or maybe a mix of licensed to unlicensed. But if there are people that are getting a good quality broadband service over fixed wireless, that should be a place that should not be overbuilt unless you have money left over. And even then, you could make an argument that why would you be overbuilding somebody that has fixed wireless? If you were the fixed wireless service provider, certainly you'd be arguing that. Access to the state grant process should work to truly invite small players so more answers can be brought to bear on this national challenge. So what he's saying there is not just don't overbuild, but also engage some of these small providers that can handle some of these difficult areas. Get a fixed wireless provider in there, and rather than spending $50,000, $90,000 to run fiber to one customer or to a group of customers, maybe you can do something a lot more reasonably priced with fixed wireless. And then you can, that will help you provide fiber to other areas. And other organizations have laid out even heavier criticism, like the Taxpayers Protection Alliance, the TPA, an advocacy nonprofit that monitors federal spending, which said the BEAD program is just the latest of the federal government's overcomplicated network of broadband funding programs, which have already proved susceptible to waste, abuse, and overbuilding. And it's true, there have been some broadband programs that have gone down the road of we always thought we'd be able to get broadband, just this amount of money will do it. And a lot of times it's like you wind up serving areas and then suddenly you got to come around 5 years later and you got to spend more money in that area. Well, part of the reason for that is that technology changes. So way back when, 4 megs by 1 meg was considered awesome. Let me tell you, I've been around a long time. That was great. And that was what we were trying to build. And that was really what the technology would support. So as we were trying to get more people to get faster internet, some people just had dial-up. It was like, okay, well, here's this DSL technology. Let's go ahead and fund that. Well, certainly technology marches on. So you wind up funding 4 by 1 or 10 by 4 or even 25 by 3 in an area, thinking that you're doing great, and you are at the time. And then suddenly something else comes along like fiber, and suddenly you're having to overbuild again. So he has a point, but there was a reason behind that. I don't think it was purposely wasted, and it wasn't purposely being meant to be overbuilt. It was just that's what happened. The other option would be to not do anything and then have waited to today to give people fiber. So they'd still be on dial-up, right? They'd still be on dial-up trying to connect. And let's not fund DSL there right now, because we know in the future, like 10 years from now, we'll be able to, maybe the prices of fiber will come down and we'll be able to do that. So while he has a point, it's something that it was hard to avoid. TPA Executive Director Patrick Hedger argued that because the White House opted against a technologically neutral approach, it will make broadband bills costlier and result in more Americans remaining unconnected for longer. Well, let's hope not. Because again, it looks like with the $42 billion we've got coming, plus matches that are going to significantly increase that we can get everybody over 100 by 20 in this country, with the majority of them being on fiber. Again, there's those really hard, difficult areas that are going to be hard to reach, and they're going to be expensive, and maybe it doesn't make sense to bust your budget there, and you've got to use fixed wireless. But in general, fiber is the way to go. So I think if you read through the Notice of Funding Opportunity, there's definitely a thumb on the scale for fiber, but there really should be a thumb on the scale for fiber, because that is the most future-proof technology that we have right now. So if you can afford to put fiber in, you should be putting fiber in. It's the kind of technology where you're going to be able to increase the speeds without having to do that much. Unlike, again, DSL, where you could put the technology in and it's twisted, it's copper pair, and it's only going to go so fast. Fiber, you can continue. You can do 1 gig today. You can do 10 gig. You can do 25 gig, all over the same piece of glass. You just got to swap out maybe some lasers, some equipment, some cards in your OLT, and you can start increasing the speeds. So you don't need to go through and rebuild infrastructure. So that's definitely the best way to go. And if you read through the NOFO, while there is a preference for fiber, it does allow states to obviously to make decisions to be able to use the money in the most effective way so that they can maximize fiber, but also serve everyone in the state that's unserved and hopefully underserved as well. And everybody should be able to do that. So I think his comment here is, I don't think it makes sense. I understand what he's trying to say, but I would disagree. I'd say that it should have a preference for fiber, but there definitely should be other technologies that are considered. So it is, in a sense, it is technology neutral from the standpoint that the states do have the opportunity or the flexibility to use other technologies if needed, but fiber is the way to go. TPA encourages states to reject much of the Biden administration's approach, he stated. Instead, they should adopt light touch, technologically neutral, market-oriented strategies that will fully leverage private enterprise instead of hamstringing it. I don't know what that means. A lot of buzzwords in there, but I would say that light touch is good. I don't like heavy-handed touches. It's very heavy-handed in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, not other stuff, as far as environmental and having to use labor union workforces and those kinds of things. There's a lot of that heavy-handed stuff in there, but as technologically, there's some leeway. And again, I think they're emphasizing at the right amount fiber and allowing other technologies to be brought in there. So I would disagree with that as well. So there you go. So thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. I've got a comment here. The man, the myth. Thank you. You were on yesterday. I think you commented. I appreciate that. What's up? Hope your day is going well. It is. Thank you. I hope yours is. Curious if you have a PNM demo. I'd like to compare what we're using now and possibly speak with management about replacing our current software. But love for you to do that. Just reach out if you want to email info@zquorum.com. Then I will hook you up with somebody. We can do a trial. I think you could do a trial if you're on another system already. That might be a problem, but certainly somebody can show you a demo on a live system of our PNM software and could possibly do a trial. Sometimes it's hard if you're having to pull equipment twice. The equipment doesn't necessarily like that, but I think that certainly can work out. And like I say, we can do trials of the software. It's just a question of whether we can do that while you're using another one. But that doesn't. You could try it on one CMTS or something like that to try it out. So yeah, reach out to us at info@zquorum.com. I'll be happy to take your information and get it to the right people that would then contact you and get you set up with that. So thanks for your interest there. And he's talking about proactive network maintenance, which would be something used on a DOCSIS cable plant. And I mentioned fiber being a great technology. DOCSIS cable modem is a great technology. It's just that any service provider, let's say cable operator, who goes to get BEAD funding, I guarantee you they're going to deploy fiber. They're not going to deploy DOCSIS because they know that fiber is the future for them as well. So when a cable company is deploying in a greenfield area, they tend to go fiber almost exclusively, unless it's just something where they can edge out. Certainly if they can edge out on their DOCSIS plant, they do that. But in general, if they are going to be going into a new area, they're going to do fiber because it is, for them, it's going to be less costly. It's more reliable for them. They can provide faster service. Maintenance is easier. One of the things that proactive network maintenance helps you do is bring your maintenance costs closer in line what it costs for fiber, because you can proactively fix things and see some of the RF issues that you have on an RF cable plant that you don't have in fiber. So in any event, cable, also a great technology. So if it's out there existing already, a lot of cable operators are increasing their speeds, and they are looking at what they can do to increase reliability. I think it was yesterday I did a broadcast about low latency DOCSIS. So that's another thing that cable operators are coming out with on DOCSIS 4.0. So they're trying to decrease latency to a point where it's actually lower than fiber. They've got there are things that they're implementing there, and Comcast is starting field trials on that. So you got fiber, you got cable. If you've already got cable in the ground, it's a great technology. It's going to last for years and years. And cable operators will eventually start overbuilding themselves, I think, with fiber as that becomes more, I guess, reasonable. Right now, it's very costly. So if a cable operator's got cable plant out there, what they're trying to do is get fiber as close as they can to the end user through remote MAC-PHY or remote PHY, getting devices out closer to the end user. And then, again, greenfield areas, they're going fiber to the home. And even in some areas, they're doing both. So they might put something out in the field, like a node out in the field that can support either HFC plant or fiber plant. And then if you have a customer that needs fiber, they can do that. They can do fiber to certain areas. So they're getting pretty flexible what cable operators can do as well. Thanks for joining me. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and click the subscribe button and ring the bell to be notified when I'm live. If you like the video, sorry, I forgot what I was saying. If you like the video, go ahead and click the little thumbs up there. I'd appreciate that. And just be aware of Tech Tuesday coming up. Next Tuesday, obviously, is July 4th. But the week after that, for 2 consecutive Tuesdays, I'm going to be talking about cybersecurity, and specifically the NIST requirements that are in BEAD, the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program that we're talking about, as far as all the money that the states are going to be getting. And the state broadband offices actually have to, they're required to make sure that the subgrantees, the internet service providers, comply with NIST, the NIST cybersecurity framework. And the internet service provider needs to attest to that. So I'm going to have a special guest with me for those 2 weeks. We're going to be talking about the NIST requirements, what it means, why it's important, how you can comply with it. It's not, it looks kind of scary and it's not easy, but we'll be providing a lot of information about how you can do that. And again, that's going to be starting on July 11th, Tuesday, July 11th, and then the following Tuesday after that, July 18th. So 2 weeks in a row, we're going to be talking about NIST and what the core parts of that program are, and then how you go about complying with it. So make sure that you tune in for that. If you're a broadband office, you want to know how that is done and how you can get help on that, and then how you can help your subgrantees with that as well. So if you're an internet service provider, certainly you're going to be interested in that. So I hope you can join me then. And thanks for joining me today. Talk to you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.